career has nothing to do with life balance. In fact, I think balance is overrated. You know, someone once told me that when you start feeling bored, you're on the fringe of mastery. And so I'm not gonna stop. $242,000 in debt. 18 months after we opened, I was on the other side of the counter watching my equipment being sold by an auctioneer from the SBA for about 17 cents on the dollar. Many colleges don't teach marketing, but they teach you the technical side of whatever discipline you're learning, whether it's in biology or chemistry, whatever it may be. To get acknowledgement as a professor, you need to be a marketer.
October's career month at Lifebook, and this category tends to be the category where we spend most of our waking hours. There are two schools of thought in this category. One is, I fund my passion with my career, and the other is, I follow my passion with my career. What would you choose?
Justin, I think passion is overrated. My mentor once taught me many years ago that it's not passion that produces commitment, it's commitment that produces passion. And passion is something that's internal. You need it. Steve Jobs used to talk about it all the time. And being passionate is extremely important, to have that fire in your belly when you don't feel like waking up. Passion is about being an adult, going to work when you don't feel like going to work because you have other people to take care of. But most importantly, without the commitment, passion is not very potent. In fact, it's impotent.
Yep.
And so I look at passion as the potential of putting your foot down on the accelerator and just knowing you're going to do it because you're passionate. You're going to get in the car, you're going to lock the car, you're going to put your seatbelt on, but it's the commitment of actually pressing your foot onto the accelerator that lets the car go. I know plenty of people who are passionate and unhappy. I know people who are passionate and broke. I know people who are passionate and borderline suicidal. They're telling me, Alex, I think that's it. I've lost everything. I've heard that many times in my life. But they weren't committed, thank God, because otherwise they would have taken themselves out. They weren't committed. So commitment is the thing. Thunder is loud, thunder is impressive, but it's lightning that does the work.
Right.
So you don't get struck by thunder, you get struck by lightning. If you can get struck by commitment, then a career becomes an extension of your life.
So your definition of passion seems to be kind of synonymous with discipline. You said that passion is what gets you out of bed in the morning even when you don't want to do it. Passion is what gets you in the car even if you don't want to go to work. You could almost replace that with discipline a lot of the times. I'm disciplined, so I wake up and I work out. I'm disciplined, so I wake up and I go to work.
I'm also going to tell you discipline's overrated too. Because if you are committed and you get muscle memory into your nervous system, and let's say you're waking up and you're going to walk 2,000 steps, right? That's doable, right? But you don't feel like it. Maybe it's cold outside. You're in the Midwest and it's cold. Or maybe it's hot outside, like in Arizona in the summertime. You don't feel like doing it. Well, you can be passionate about it, but it's the commitment that keeps you going. You need discipline for the first 3 to 5 days, sometimes 7 days, and then pretty soon it becomes unconsciously competent. It becomes automatic. It becomes a habit.
Right.
And these tiny habits, which is written by a colleague of mine, BJ Fogg, you put certain things into motion, then you don't need as much passion anymore. You don't need as much discipline, but the commitment has to stay the same. It never changes.
What are the advantages of choosing work that you're passionate about versus choosing a work just to generate income?
Well, I was very fortunate because I was not employable. I thought I knew more than my boss coming out of college. I was never hired. I interviewed one time for an insurance company, and they threw me out because they said I was too arrogant for my age. And so all I did is study, and I started a business that I knew nothing about, and it was a frozen yogurt store and bakery called Polar Frozen Yogurt in Long Beach, California. And 18 months into the business, and an SBA loan, the United States Small Business Administration loan, and $242,000 in debt. 18 months after we opened, I was on the other side of the counter watching my equipment being sold by an auctioneer from the SBA for about 17 cents on the dollar. That was my first experience. Now, I wasn't passionate about frozen yogurt, and I certainly wasn't passionate about baking, because all those cinnamon buns would go to the people who were homeless, and I fed them, and they ended up being more of them to love, because they were getting stuffed with cinnamon buns, at 8 o'clock at night. But all I can remember is I didn't like this business. I'm not passionate about the business. I love people, but I wasn't really passionate about it.
Gotcha.
And so I did it for the money. I thought it would be the money. And yeah, it cost a lot of money. My mother's house, which was collateral, went into foreclosure. Fortunately, I learned how to negotiate. You don't get what you want, you get what you negotiate. Another mentor of mine taught me that. Mm-hmm. And they never foreclosed on that house. And I remember burning, the lien paperwork when finally, the house was paid off. And so I made a big mistake going into a business. First of all, I knew nothing about, and of course, how can I be passionate about something I know nothing about?
Right.
So instead, my next chapter, and this is like 17, 18 businesses later, I was the favorite prey for, network marketing companies, and, I was just broken. I was a broken human being at age 24 at the time. And what I realized was I am really good, for some reason, on stage, in front of people. I don't have stage fright. I don't have speaker's block. I can extemporaneously, speak, and I have a bunch of stories that I'm very passionate about and committed to, whether they're parables or fables or my own stories, or these little nuances and metaphors and analogies that a lot of people know me for. I'm not famous, but with over 860,000 students in 30 years, I've had a lot of impact on a lot of people. That's what I'm passionate about, is making a difference so that people can not just reach their potential, they exceed their potential. And in anyone's career, I tell people, and I look at them straight in the eye, and my career has a lot to do with standing on stage, and not one-on-one, but one-to-many.
Yep.
I tell them, when I have a rapport finally, and they like me and trust me, I say, you're not as good as you think you are. You're better.
I love that.
And there's always a pregnant pause there. And some people weep, other people laugh, but it's almost like I'm giving them permission not to burst through their comfort zone, because I don't believe that. It's too scary. I'd rather expand the comfort zone, so what can be comfortable, noble comfort, right, is within that comfort zone, but it's expanded like the universe does. Yeah. So why burst through a comfort zone? Why not expand the comfort zone so that you're doing more with a lot less effort?
You and my dad were accountability partners for years.
John Butcher.
And he said countless times how much that strategy has changed him as a man and as a business owner, and how it was so formulative for who he is today. Why do you think that's such a powerful strategy, especially in personal development?
I think it's no different than the apostles in the Christian tradition, or the followers of Buddha or Muhammad, or any religious tradition. In going back, there's always disciples of some kind, right? Who are disciplined in the teaching. And so this mastermind group, and there were 4 of us, and your dad and I were 2 of those people. We were disciplined to meet at the same time every week for the same amount of time, and we had a little rhythm going. We talk about all 12 categories from Lifebook. Career would come up a lot. Yep. You could say it was a business mastermind, but it was also a lifeline business mastermind, because some of us, like I had kids that were older than some of the other men, and so I would tell them what to look forward to, when people turn to adolescent and teenage age, right, as you know. And also, I can remember when they gave me insight on business and with hiring and firing, hire slowly, fire fast.
Yep.
So I think he believed it had an impact, as I did, is we got to intimately get to know each other as a sentient beings, as men, as humans, as husbands, as brothers, as sons, and that fabric of coincidence that we can have with each other is very rare to do it on a weekly basis, and we did it for nearly 5 years.
So my dad's referenced that accountability group, and he said you guys would get on at the beginning of the week, say, I'm going to do this, and then at the end of the week you get on another call and you say, hey, I did this, and you did not want to be the guy on that call to say, hey, I said I was going to do this, but actually I never did it.
Well, that was a part of it. Accountability comes from the Roman Senate when Roman senators would stand up and they would be accounted for, to have a quorum, to be able to vote on some of the laws going through Rome. And of course, the Senate was adopted by the United States and other nations as well. But as far as accountability goes, just like responsibility, accountability is the ability to be accounted for. Responsibility is the ability to respond.
Right.
So none of us, all four of us, we didn't want to be the one who was out of integrity. And integrity is not good or bad. Integrity is just being consistent of doing what you say you're going to do, which is not always easy. So what we would do is, I'm terrified of not setting a goal that's too high and not hitting it. I'm not terrified of that. I'm terrified of setting a goal too low and then hitting it. Okay, that's terror to me because that's mediocrity. That's worse than failure, right? Sloppy success is better than perfect mediocrity. That's an Alexism. And so we would hold each other accountable, and sometimes if we set a bar that was too low, the other guys would get involved and raise the bar a bit, right? So we kind of had a minimum target, outrageous, goals, right?
I like that.
The very minimum, then a target one you could probably hit, but it's a stretch, and then outrageous that is possibly not going to happen, but you're stretching your comfort zone, and by expanding it, it becomes more comfortable in those outer parts of the solar system that you thought were just unreachable.
I love that. So you guys actually helped each other not only make your goals more realistic, but also make your goals slightly more unrealistic, so that you could reach for more, right?
We made our goals relevant too, right? We would lose credibility if we didn't follow through, but we would make them relevant to what our intentions are, what our aspirations were. Many times, if you don't have an accountability group or an accountability partner, goals that are set are doable, they're reachable, but they're not really relevant to your journey. So we were really good at doing that as well, and it shaped my future. So I'm very grateful to your dad and to the other men in that group.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you guys talked about Lifebook a lot, which has been talked about by a lot of people as one of the best goal-setting frameworks in the world.
Your dad would smuggle Lifebook in, I think, almost every time, but it was an easy conversation to have because we would look at each of the categories. I'm chosen to talk about career, and today, unlike 40 or 50 years ago, there is no 9 to 5.
Right.
The career is seamless, and it just kind of washes into personal. There's no personal versus professional. I don't see weekends as being holiday time. There has to be a concerted effort to take free days and free time. But when I was growing up, my father would work as an engineer. He would work a 9 to 5. He'd come home around 6:30, and we'd have dinner. And then for the weekends, we would go out, and I'd be with my cousins or my grandparents. Well, that's not the case anymore. People don't even have dinner together, right? So that tradition, unfortunately, has gone away. People are at the dinner table with their smartphones texting across the table. My kids aren't allowed to bring the phones to the dinner table.
My dad had that rule too.
Yeah, but my kids are in their 20s. And I think one of the single most important reasons why career is critically important to think about before formal education is because college is not what it used to be. So coming out of college, you come into a very competitive environment, which both of my kids are experiencing. Both have communication majors. Both are smart. And it's a lot more challenging than I remember. And so doing what your dad did is something I would have liked to have done, taken that same money and put you into a mastermind like Genius Network, right? And for the same amount of money, you're getting a world-class education for 3 years, 4 years, without the college debt.
Exactly.
All right? So that's a really good way to go. I told my kids, here's a certain amount of money. You can go to college or you can start a business, okay? So which do you prefer? Both said college. So I said, I'm not going to make them follow their dad's path, right? And my former wife, she wanted them to go to college. And that was a good decision for them. When they get out, though, that's a shovel of reality that hits the forehead. And now they're finding out, okay, well, I didn't know or learn how to interview in college. I know how to take tests, but I didn't know that I'm competing with other graduates that came through, and some are a lot smarter than me and a lot more experienced than I am. So the playing field has changed, the game has changed, and so if we can go a little bit back to the past, and even though there's career, have family dinners, so the family just doesn't wilt away.
Absolutely.
And have at least 3 dinners a week. That's not asking a lot. I used to have 7 dinners a week with my family, but 3, I think is healthy, and I think my grandparents would be rolling in their graves if they heard me saying that, because they wouldn't understand it. But that's what I believe. I think career is they're the bricks in a building, in a brick building, but the relationships and the accountability partners that we have along the way, the masterminds and the networking groups, that's the mortar that holds the bricks together.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's what sticks it all together.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I think it was in Alexisms, but it could have been on your podcast, All Selling Aside. But you said something along the lines of opportunities don't come in the form of money or action. They come in the form of people, right?
Well, opportunities can be people or projects. A project is something that has an end game. People can be a reservoir of ongoing giving and giving and giving. Now, some people can be an ongoing taking and taking. So you'd be prepared on what type of people that you're looking for. But other people's money is opportunity.
Yep.
Other people's energy is opportunity. Other people's time. Okay. Other people's leadership. OP, and then just add the next letter for the acronym. If you find the right people, there's a lot more opportunity there. But finding the right people for the right career at the right time.
Yeah. As a self-proclaimed recovering serial entrepreneur, what advice would you give your younger self for a work-life harmony, as you call it?
Well, serial entrepreneurs do a little bit of everything, and by having a lot of opportunities juggling up in the air, it's kind of like spinning dishes in the circus. Some dishes are going to break. And so the reason I'm a recovering serial entrepreneur, there's no 12-step program for that. It just is. I like to focus and put my eggs in one basket at a time and not dilute some of my efforts. I would have told my younger self to not just settle for the successes I had to be one of the first digital marketers to get audio online in 2002, called Audio Generator, with 2 other partners. The first to have video available via email and on websites in 2004. That's 2 years before YouTube. The first to have digital marketing pages that were pre-made pages, that were pre-written, pre-tested, and that was called Marketing Makeover Generator. And these are things that people haven't heard. And the reason they haven't heard of it is the mistake I made. I made hundreds of thousands, in some case millions of dollars, but my students who carried on and were taught by me and then exceeded my level of teaching, and now they're my mentors, they ended up building businesses,
right,
and now they're $100 million concerns for the same technologies. So a big mistake I made is digging and finding gold, but not continuing to dig. I'm not going to say I got bored with it, but I could have innovated. I could have been more like Steve Jobs and just continued and then created a scaled business versus, you know what, it's nice to make an extra $50,000 a month, which that was just a ton of money for me. It's a ton of money now per month, right? That's $600,000 a year, and that's from one project. And you got something else coming in at $40K a month. Well, what if it was $500,000 a month? Now, it's not the money. Think of all the other people that you're employing and all the opportunities that you have for other people's lives. And I don't only count the people I've hired. I count the goldfish, the cats, the dogs, the ferrets, the pet pigs, all the people, the ex-wives, ex-husbands, all those people are an ecosystem that the value creator, which is the entrepreneur, as long as they're non-serial, right? I know very, very few successful serial entrepreneurs. I can think of one right now. His name is Roland Fraser, but very, very few. They're usually ADHD. They're all over the place, divorced several times. They don't know their kids don't know them. They're just crazy, right? That's not what I want. I want to find the next business and the next enterprise I want to build. I don't want to make the mistake of stopping too soon. I want to keep it going and go beyond the boredom. Someone once told me that when you start feeling bored, you're on the fringe of mastery. Ooh. And so I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going.
I love that quote. When you just start getting bored, you're on the fringe of mastery.
Think about a great musician. I mean, they have to be bored if they're practicing, 7-8 hours a day, like a true virtuoso, right? They got to be bored at some time. How about an athlete, who's constantly, or a boxer, hitting the same bag again and again and again, getting hit. They got to get bored at some time, right? But they push through that boredom, and that's where the mastery comes in.
My friend Kenny Aronoff says repetition is preparation for success.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And, Tony Robbins has been saying for 40 years, repetition is the mother of skill. So that repetition, if you can find joy in that and passion, that passion and commitment work hand in hand.
You've generated over $400 million in sales for your clients. What do you believe is the most crucial factor in generating such great results?
Well, I stopped counting at 417 million, and that's for students, clients, myself, everyone. I thought it would be fun. I don't know if it is $1 billion. It could be. I know it's not all in my bank. The greatest satisfaction isn't the money I made for myself, but getting calls, getting telegram messages, old school telegram messages, getting snail mail videos of a house that an employee just bought, secretly being acknowledged as saving a family's future. Those are the things that gave me the most satisfaction. I mean, obviously, I feel like I'm contributing, to society. I could have paid more attention for the money coming in to me, because if I partnered with certain people versus letting them go with my ideas, I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'd be on an island like Richard Branson somewhere. But I have zero regrets. I really have no regrets. I'm told that at the end of life, between the final inhale and the final exhale, right, what happens is that people have two types of regrets. Now, I've seen TED Talks. There are 5 or 6 types of regrets, but the two types, type number 1 is, gosh, I wish I hadn't done that to that person, right? I wish I hadn't done that to myself, right? And that regret doesn't even hold a candle to, gosh, I wish I had done that. Yeah. And I don't have regrets like that. I do have a I wish I had done that, where I should have partnered with certain people. They invited me to, and I said, no, it's all yours. And that's happened like half a dozen times. So I think maybe the 7th time, if it happens again, I'm not going to let it go. I think it'll be for fun. But I think that in looking at my past, the greatest satisfaction is with not customers, clients. We dealt with patients in the medical field. It's with my team, independent contractors, people on the team. I don't think the customer's always right. In fact, the customer's usually wrong, but I always want to have my employer's backs, because they'll take care of the customer or the client. So
would you say that your team and all the people that you work with are one of the biggest contributing factors to how you can pull these results off for your clients?
Great results cannot happen without a great team.
There you go.
Richard Branson says, don't worry about the customer, take care of your team, and they'll take care of the customer. So I think team building is not a lost art. I mean, it's very difficult to do. It's kind of like the honeymoon stage in a relationship. You're married, after the first 6 months, some people change. Not always, but some people do. Well, an employee, after about 3 months, they change, right? They may let their hair down, or they say things they normally wouldn't have said when they were on their best behavior. So kind of seeing through that and foreshadowing and looking into the future and knowing what you're willing to put up with and knowing what the non-negotiables are.
Yeah.
I've heard this many times, but firm procedures and firm policies allow you to be flexible with people and with projects.
It's very interesting. Firm procedures and policies allow you to be flexible with people and projects.
That's right.
As opposed to being firm with people and projects and flexible with your...
If you have
policies.
firm procedures and policies that they live by, you don't have to be firm with them.
Right.
You can be flexible or fire them
Yeah, there you go.
because they're not living by the procedures and policies which they agreed to.
Yeah.
There's only 3 ways to make an agreement. You keep it, you renegotiate it before the deadline, and then you unmake it if it's no longer relevant. So that's what we do. We keep them, we renegotiate if we have to, or we unmake them when they're no longer relevant.
In your book, Alexisms, what's one key lesson that you hope that readers will take away and apply to their life or to their business?
There's one Alexism, I think it's number 33, and it says, there's 3 things you can never take back: a broken promise, a neglected opportunity, and a day wasted.
Yeah.
Alexisms, to me, is a book that took 25 years to write because they're all my little sayings. I only wrote the book because a lot of my students and colleagues would use them on stage, and then if I followed them, it looked like I was the plagiarist, right? And so I put them all in the book so at least I could get acknowledged, for taking credit for it.
Right.
But that book isn't my life book. This is my life book. And so here I have all the categories, and I've rewritten it 4 times. The most recent time, it was rewritten in Dubai.
Yep.
And it just so happens that Life Book is run by your dad and your mom, and is run by Vishen Lakhani, and Vishen runs Mind Valley, right? So it's a joint venture between those two. And Vishen used to be a student of mine until he no longer found my things useful and he went way beyond me. So he's one of the ones where I used to tell people, especially students, hey, I want you to be better, wealthier. I want you to have more reach and visibility. And then nothing is more annoying when it actually happens. And Vishen is one of those people. So along with your dad, John Butcher, and with Vishen, this book is something I go back to month after month after month.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's always some type of a relaunch that's happening. So I welcome people listening or watching to look for that Life Book launch and just look it up and have one. If there's a physical event happening, go to that because that will make all the difference.
Oh, yeah.
The done with you versus the do-it-yourself part.
Right. And something that Lifebook gives you is a congruent life philosophy, right? Because you go through your premises in every single category of life, and then at the end you have all of your foundational beliefs in every single category of life. Do you think it's important for people to get crystal clear on their values and on their beliefs just to lead a high-quality life in general?
Justin, you know the answer to that question.
I guess
it's
I
a
do,
rhetorical
yeah.
question. The answer is, of course,
Yeah.
not just yes. But I want to share one of my premises for career. I believe that career has nothing to do with life balance. In fact, I think balance is overrated, and balance is bogus, as one of my colleagues used to say a lot. If something is in balance, let's say the scales of justice, right? And she's blindfolded, right? So justice is blind, but there are these scales. Now, if the scales, if you see my hands, if they're in perfect balance, is there any movement?
No, sir.
No. Albert Einstein said nothing happens until something
Moves. Right.
So if there's no movement, balance is not the thing we want. In fact, I think it's impossible. You can't have 50% career, 50% personal and family, and you're going to 50% all the categories of Life Book. You can't, right? So rather than balance, I replace that. This is my premise. I don't believe in balance. I believe in career harmony. Sometimes I got to give my career 90% of my attention, which means I can only give the other categories 10% of my attention. And then other times I'll give career 0% and give the rest 100%. So that harmony is fluid, and it is more of a reflection of the universe, because the Earth is spinning at about 800 miles an hour, at about 23 and a half degrees on a slant. So the scientists tell us it's going about 64,000 miles an hour around this 11,000 degree Fahrenheit fireball they call the sun. And then the sun is moving at 252 times the speed of a rifle bullet, and it's going around our galaxy called the Milky Way in the outer third, which is the Goldilocks area in the galaxy for life. And it takes about 230 million years for one revolution. Now, that's a lot to think about. But if you think about how many people are afraid of change, especially in their career, the fear of innovating, changing careers, transitioning, we have never been in the same place in space at any given time ever since your first breath until your final breath. So you're going to have change through your life. When my father passed in 2001, I remember looking on his tombstone at Forest Lawn Cemetery, which is in Los Angeles, and they paid extra for I don't know, he wouldn't enjoy it, but there was a better view, so they got him a spot, higher up on the hill, as if it's going to matter, right? So it was just harder to climb to during the funeral, as far as, we had a lot of old people there, right? And they're going, man, how am I going to get up here? Like, George was never this much of a headache, right? Okay, so George got a good slot, but when I looked at his tomb, there was the date of his birth, which was February 24th, 1935, and the date of his death, which was in October of 2021. Now, in between his birth date and his death date, there was one symbol. What is that symbol? Between the date, just think of a tombstone, between the date of the birth and the date of the death, there is something that is between those two.
Is it a dash?
It's a dash. You know what that dash is?
What?
That dash is your life.
Oh, wow.
So make your dash count. And the way you make that dash count is make sure that you're aligned with your life book. Your categories and your premises will change over time. But to know and have that self-awareness as they're changing, you write them down, because it's a Chinese proverb, pale ink is better than a photographic memory. So making your dash count between the time where you decided, okay, I'm going to come into this world, Dad sent me, Mama's receiving me, 40 weeks later you come out, right? And then you're born a winner. You won the ovarian lottery. And then however long you live, 90 years, 80 years, maybe over 100 years, that really doesn't matter, because you have a death date as an sentient being. What's between the birth date and the death date? The dash. What does the dash represent? Your life. So isn't a life worth living a life worth recording? That's where Life Book comes in.
And something about Life Book as well is, like you said, it gives you a chance to not only record exactly what you feel right now, but also it gives you a chance to look back on, well, I want to see what I believed and what I thought and what I wanted 8 years ago. You can go back, if you went through Life Book 8 years ago, you can go back and look at exactly what you were doing and what you were thinking. And it's interesting to see the evolution of a person if you can go through their various life books, right?
When something changes very quickly, there's chaos, and we've seen it in human history, and that's called revolution. When something changes too fast and the people want instant change because there's been tyranny or something's happened, right? And we can go back to the French Revolution, the American Revolution. There's many revolutions that have happened over time, right? Well, if something happens naturally and people aren't dying as a result of the change, and it's happening organically, that's called evolution. And evolution can take millions of years, or it can take a year. And the evolution of Life Book, write down the categories, if you get access to one, which I recommend you do. I mean, for the cost of a dinner for 4 in most cities in the country, you get a Life Book, right? For less than $500, you get a Life Book. If you can pony up and get to a physical event, even better. Oh, yeah. It's worth It's worth every single penny because you're going to go with other like-minded people who are more committed than the people who don't go there.
Very true.
They may be just as passionate, but they're not as committed because they're not there. That's where we go back to commitment versus passion, because commitment produces passion. So in looking at your first version of Lifebook and you look at the evolution from a year, you get to see growth. The funny thing about a dash on a tombstone, if you end up having one, right? Some people may get cremated. They may have other ceremonies of death. But there is a dash between your birth date and your in your obituary and the date of your death. Well, that dash looks the same. Every person's dash looks the same, but every person's dash is different.
Very true.
If you got to spend time with that person, that dash is different than someone else's dash, but it looks the same on the tombstone. So you don't know by looking at someone after their death what they were like, but you could read the different iterations and versions of their life book, and you can find out how they grew, why they grew, and what they grew into. And that's what makes life book so valuable, because if it ain't written, it doesn't exist.
There you go.
I didn't say that. IRS says that every single year. So that's what I talk about with the life book. If your life is worth living, it's worth writing down.
Absolutely. Me and my wife went through Lifebook about a year and 2 months ago, and I was just we were just going through it again actually right before we came here, and we are on I think the third or fourth category now. But I was looking back at my old Lifebook, and actually a lot of the things that I wrote down in there came true. I'm working with my dad now. I'm in way better shape than I was. I have a beautiful wife now, and everything's fantastic. So it's crazy that bringing that much clarity and consciousness to your life can transform it so rapidly relatively to how long everything else takes. Right?
Look, in sub-Saharan Africa, hundreds of years ago, there was a technique where the chief or the shaman, the priest of the village, would call something out, singing, and then the rest of the tribe would respond. And it's called call response.
Yeah.
And it wasn't invented by the inventors of experiential learning, as many people suggest. It was invented by Africans, basically. That's where it was first seen. So they would chant something, and it could have been a wedding or a funeral or a civic gathering or a spiritual gathering of some kind, childbirth. They'd yell something out, and then everyone else would yell the exact same thing. So call, response, right? Now, I believe that if you write it, and then you read it, and then you repeat it out loud, right? Then you're getting all of your kinesthetic resources together, where you're seeing it, you're reading it out loud, you're writing it, right? And so that's what Lifebook does. You're writing it down, you're reading it, and if you say it out loud, which I do, it'll come to reality a lot easier, because if you believe in a universe that listens, then why confuse the universe? Tell them straight away. You know, like they say, down under, which means tell them right away. And the goal for saying things out loud, because sometimes they don't sound very intelligent, so you can go back and revise it because it didn't come out of your mouth the way you thought it was written. So I think that the life book as it is, I think it is a living document that changes over time, for sure. It is a life book, so of course it has life to change. It must change as you change. And then as you're writing new stuff down, I would say it out loud. You don't have to say it in front of people, but say it out loud. Now, if you actually tell other people, now you have accountability, which you talked about earlier on in this interview, and now other people can hold you to account of what you're telling them. If you tell a bunch of people you're going to lose 10 pounds in the next 30 days, and you're having trouble waking up, and you're going to get on a scale in front of 20 people to watch, let's say like Weight Watchers used to do, then there's accountability. So then the commitment goes a lot higher because of the fear of embarrassment.
It absolutely does.
So that's what's very important to me, is hold myself accountable. And that's what the life book community can do, is hold each other accountable with the power of AI to make it a lot easier and a lot faster to write this stuff down.
Absolutely. You talked a little bit about how Lifebook is a living document. We're actually working on I'm not sure how much I can say about this, but we're actually working on a product called the Living Lifebook. You helped us a lot with this, actually. And what's so crazy about what you said about accountability, the fact that, of course, AI can be your accountability partner, but a person on the opposite end of a table or even the opposite end of a phone can keep you so accountable. I did this online accountability log for 100 days where I made a video every day saying I'm going to study for an hour, I'm going to study business for an hour, and I'm going to do a workout. And I filmed myself doing it every single day, and I did it for 100 days. And if I would have missed a day, there probably would have been some people that texted me and said, "Hey man, what the hell? You missed your thing. What's going on?" Because I know when I stopped that, a lot of people texted me and they said, "Hey man,
What happened?"
Yeah, what happened?
And that's what I go back to. Passion is overrated, because you can be dispassionate, but if you know other people are holding you to account, it doesn't matter how low your passion is. You're going to be committed because you don't want to look bad in front of them.
Exactly.
And you don't want to let them down. And so that's why accountability groups work so well. I've gone as far, Justin, as having my students in competitive settings where I make them put $100 in an escrow fund to an anti-foundation. In other words, a foundation that does bad in the world. So you can just fill in the blanks of what those are, right? Everyone has different ones. But I mean, this is really doing bad stuff for humanity. And there are foundations like that, right? So I would put them in the foundation that they despise the most. They would never give any money to it. And they would put $100. And if they didn't complete 80% of what they were supposed to complete, then it would automatically go to that anti-foundation. I didn't have one person when I did that for 5.5 years that didn't complete the 80%. Because they did not want to give their money to that foundation. They didn't care if it went to a nice one. They got the money back.
Yeah.
But that was one of the most powerful accountability, I think, manipulation strategies that I ever came up with, and I would do it again. Some people were insulted and didn't even want to do it. I said, well, if you're so committed, then what do you have to fear? You'll go 100 for 100, right?
Yeah.
So there are little different tricks that you can do, but the Lifebook community, that's the living and breathing document. That's the wisdom of the crowd, and that's the AI. We're not talking AI from Google and the dark web and all this other stuff. We're talking AI within the Lifebook family of all the people who've come before us. All the giants we're standing on the shoulders of. I was one of them. I went through in 2008, 2009. So I was one of the first to go through, and it was in Chicago.
Yep.
And I remember going through it, and I said, how can John make money on this? I mean, he's over-delivering. This is like first-class, bespoke, couture, experience.
Oh, yeah.
How is he going to scale it? And he couldn't. So then Vision came along, and through a few introductions, they scaled it, and now I think you're going to eclipse 200,000 probably by next year of the people who have this experience. Why can't it be 2 million? That's what this podcast is about. Why can't we 10x that?
Yep.
10x is easier than 2x. A couple of friends of mine wrote a book like that. 10x is a lot easier than going twice as much, because if you have the capacity and the mindset to be able to do 10x, 2x is just a pathway to it. It's nothing. But if you set your horizon on 2x, maybe you'll do 1.5, times. Maybe you'll hit your target goal. But 2x, if that's where you ultimately want to be, make that the minimum. 10x the target, and 20x being the
shoot for the moon
outrageous,
goal. Yeah.
Right? So if you shoot for the moon, you hit the roof. You shoot for the roof, you hit your couch. Okay? Why not shoot for the sun so you hit the moon?
I like that a lot. Widely regarded as one of the most experienced marketers in the world.
Only by the people who know me.
So, what's your definition of marketing?
Marketing is advertising multiplied. Advertising is where often you're paying for something and you're getting exposure, visibility, marketing reach, and then you get a return on it, whether it's raising of the hand, like, hey, I want more information, or they actually pay for the product. Marketing is what happens before, during, and after advertising. So when you multiply and you exponentially multiply again and again all the different types of promotions and ads, that's marketing. It's the totality of what the business does. Advertising can sell product. marketing can build factories for the products to be manufactured in. So I think every business is a marketing business. If you're a dentist, you're a marketer. If you're a chiropractor, you're a marketer. If you're in financial services, you're a marketer. It doesn't matter what kind of schooling you got, what certification you have. If you're an MD and you have that certificate, you're still a marketer. How are you going to get new patients, right? And so that's usually the problem, because many colleges don't teach marketing, but they teach you the technical side of whatever discipline you're learning, whether it's in biology or chemistry and whatever it may be. To get acknowledgement as a professor, you need to be a marketer, period. So marketing increases visibility, it increases the reach that you get and the exposure you get. It's advertising multiplied.
So I've heard you say this more than a few times, but can you explain why storytelling is such an important aspect of marketing?
Stories are memorable because they have a beginning, they have a middle, and an end. I'll give you an example. So I want you to picture it is the 14th century in Northeast Asia, which is now Japan. And there is a very tall and big, like sumo-sized, big-sized samurai warrior. And that's when the samurais lived and protected Japan. And he's there with his sword, and he's approaching this Zen monk who is meditating by a river. The monk is about 5'2" and the samurai warrior is about 6'2". And for Japan, 6'2" is very tall. So the samurai warrior walks up to the monk. Now, time out. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the story has to begin with a time, when it was, and where it was. Okay? So where and when. That's what's memorable, so you can picture it. Where is this taking place?
In Japan in the 14th century.
In the 14th century, Northeastern Asia, which is not Japan yet, but
remember
that, okay? Mm-hmm. Who is it involving? Because that's the next thing. Who? Who's involving?
I see what you're doing.
Who is it involving? Tell
It's
me.
involving the samurai who's 6'2" and the monk who's 5'2".
So you can see that, right? Yeah. Now the next part is what happens. You ready? Okay, here we go. Time in. Action. So the samurai walks up to the Zen monk who's meditating and said, "Master, I want to know, because you are so wise, and for many, many years people have heralded you as the wisest man here in this land, what is the difference between evil and goodness?" Now the monk looked up at him, and he was in a lotus position. He stood up. He was about a foot shorter than him, and he looked up, pointed his finger at the samurai warrior, and he said, "I will not waste my time with such scum as you." And the samurai was startled. He took out his sword and he said, "Little man, I will cut you into pieces for your insults." Time out. Can you see what's happening?
Yeah.
Action. So after the samurai said that, the monk looked at him and said, "That, my friend, is what evil is like." So then the samurai, sitting back and understanding the wisdom that this little man had just showed him through that experience, without using the least amount of words possible, very zen, and he said, "Master," and he got down on one knee. He put the samurai sword back into its sheath, and he said, "Please forgive me. I am your humble servant. I will be your student for life, and I will follow you to the ends of the earth." And then the monk looked down at him, because now he was taller, because the samurai was kneeling, and he put his hand on his head and he said, "And young man, that is what goodness is like." So the moral of the story is experience is not the best teacher. If you're a parent, you know that to be true with your kids. If you're a spouse, you know that to be true with your spouse. If you're an ex-spouse, you know that to be true with your ex-spouse. If you have parents still living, you know that to be true with your parents. Experience is not the best teacher. Experience is the only teacher. So anytime you have an opportunity to write your life into one book with 12 different categories, Life Book is the way to go. And it's the only way to get you to the promised land year after year.
My goodness.
I just made that part up at the end, but I took a story, it's memorable, and I aligned it with what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
The moral of the story is experience is the only teacher, which is an Alexism. And I believe that. It's not the best teacher, it's the only teacher, right? And life book is an experiential process. You can't through osmosis say, okay, this is my category and just think it through. You're going to write it down, and then you're going to reread it, and if it doesn't sound right, you're going to change it. I'm not a writer. Yes, you are. You are a writer. You just don't know it. In fact, don't be a writer. Be an author. An author means authority. Who else is an authority of your own life? You just happen to be writing it. And if you have some kind of writer's block, that something happens between your brain and your hands when you're writing or typing, then just speak it and let AI do the rest.
Yeah, you can do voice dictation.
Of course you can do voice dictation. Yeah. There is no excuse. If that dash is worth living, because it looks the same on every tombstone, it's worth recording. That's why stories work. Now, time out again.
That was intense, man.
Time out. Did I prove to you through the experience of telling a story, and I was taking timeouts, so we're changing realities, right? Did I prove to you in a more indelible way for you, for Justin, through this one interview, why stories are so important versus me just telling you this is why story is so important?
Absolutely.
I told you it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but who cares? I told you start with a when and where, and then go to who, and then what happened, and then how did it resolve, and then why is it relevant? Okay, so let me ask you, you heard it once. Why is the monk and samurai story relevant to experience as the only teacher?
The samurai got a bit mad when the little man said, "Hey, I don't appreciate." He said something that pissed off the samurai man a little bit, and then he went, "I'm gonna cut you up, little man. I'm gonna cut you up." And he goes, "That's bad. That's what badness is."
The samurai asked, "What is evil and goodness?" So the old man, the monk, showed him what evil was from his own experience.
Right.
So he'd always remember it. Then when he got on one knee and genuflected, say, "You're my master," then that's what goodness is like. He taught him through experience being that teacher. So it sticks. So why do stories work in marketing? Because they are sticky. They're like Velcro, and they stick to your heart. Look, if you win the heart of your reader, viewer, listener, their head will follow. If you win someone's time, their money will follow. But people try to chase the money instead of their time. Chase the time, money follows. Chase the heart, the head follows.
I love that. So you talked about being screw being a writer. You should be an author, because being an author, it gives you authority, right? And who else has authority over your life other than you?
I've never heard of author's block. Have you? There's
No,
writer's
sir.
block because writer is not passionate and committed enough. But if you're really committed, you can have stuff flowing through your veins and coming out your fingers or your mouth, and you can speak your way through writing your own life book.
Yeah. For a lot of people that haven't gone through life book, they keep their entire life, all of their plans, all of their strategies, all of their beliefs in their head, right? And the way that I explain this is, if I ask you what's 4 divided by 1, you can go, oh, well, that's 4. But if I go, what's 4,526,304 divided by 456? You might need to write that down because it's a bit more complicated, right? Wouldn't you want to write down the strategies in your life, your beliefs and your premises and your purpose, right? It seems a little bit more complicated than just keeping it in your brain.
That's true, Justin. And writing is the doing part of thinking. I agree with that, and I've known that notion for some time. But here's another reason why to write it down. You don't know what mood you're going to be in tomorrow. That mood is going to filter your feelings about what you're thinking. So you may be thinking you're a great brother, but then if your mood is off, you may say to yourself, BS. But if you write down in your life book why part of your premise in relationship is to be a great brother and what you can do and all these other bullet points that you can write down, when you're in a crappy mood, by reading what you wrote, it can put you in a better mood. It can be therapy for free. So writing it down is very important because the mood you were in writing it down may not be the same mood when you're thinking about it. But if you don't write it down, then you're going to molest the thoughts that you thought were very important to you, and you're just going to call them mundane and mediocre, and they're not that important. That's what most people do if it's not written. I don't know how many people I've ever encountered where they see a product on the shelf, they go, "Hey, I had that idea 10 years ago." Well, why weren't you committed? Why weren't you committed to creating that? Why were you just passionate about it, and why didn't you have the commitment and wherewithal to at least give it a shot? So they say, "Hey, I had the idea." So what? People have millions of ideas. But putting that idea into a blueprint, having that blueprint improved, the Golden Gate Bridge, where I used to live by, about less than 10 miles away from the Golden Gate Bridge, people would travel the world just to get there, and some people go there to jump, but other people go to walk it. And that Golden Gate Bridge had many different designs. So someone had a vision about it, and then that turned into a blueprint, and then you can look it on Google. I don't know how many iterations, but finally it came up with that Golden Gate Bridge, which many people died just constructing it during the Depression, right? But that blueprint changed until the final manifestation. And now it's been there over 100 years, or almost 100 years. And you look at it, and you see all the cars going back and forth to Marin County, where I used to live, to San Francisco, downtown, and you say, God, this was once a vision in someone's mind. And if that guy or gal, if they just had the idea, think of all the people they would have impacted. Think of Steve Jobs, right? His ideas turned into reality. So it's not just passion, it's commitment. And commitment means writing it down. Commitment is being held accountable. Commitment means, for me, keeping a life book with 12 categories so you can be in harmony, not in balance. And commitment means that sloppy success is better than perfect mediocrity. Look, the only thing worse than going in the wrong direction is going the wrong direction enthusiastically. And if you haven't written the stuff down, you will go in that wrong direction. I've done it many times.
I love these Alexisms, man. These are great. Know the difference between what's urgent and what's important, and do what's important first. Stephen Pressfield said that in The Art of War.
Stephen Pressfield, someone that I got to meet in 2003, thanks to a mutual friend of ours, Joe Polish. And he calls that the priority principle. And the priority principle is knowing the difference between what's important and what's urgent, and then doing what's important first.
Right.
Most people do what's urgent first. So if you want to look at what's important but not yet urgent, you're not going to find a lot of things right now if you're stressed out and you feel like you're overwhelmed. Overwhelmed, Justin, with Lifebook and any other thing that you ever put your mind to, is not having too many things to do. That's not overwhelm. Overwhelm, in my opinion, is not knowing what to do first. So in your career, if you don't know what to do next or first in the sequence of things, then you're going to be overwhelmed, right? So when you look at urgent, if you need to make a decision about your career and it's super urgent, is that going to give you stress or is that going to make you calm? Which
Probably
one?
won't make you calm.
Okay, will it make you stressful, you think?
I bet.
Because there's this time horizon, right? But if it's not urgent and you got plenty of time to think about it, and you're not cramming the decision, you'll be more calm. And just like water going through a hose, if you crimp the hose, less water. If you keep the hose uncrimped, more water goes through. Well, just look at that as idea generation. And so if it's not urgent but important, there's no hose that's crimped synaptically in your brain, and it's a lot easier to pour better ideas for your future down. Most people don't live there. It'll take you about 3 months, but you can turn the things that are urgent and important into important but not yet urgent.
I love that analogy, the hose crimping, because when you're worried about a deadline or worried about, well, I don't know what I'm going to do this before this, it not only clouds your decision making in almost every way, I feel like it also slows down the decision-making process, right?
The other thing is you can't have different versions of it, which is called iterations. So you were on calls that I was leading with Lifebook for our launch.
Yep.
And your dad, at the end of the meeting, because I'd have PowerPoint presentations, your dad would just be blown away. And he goes, Mandossian, I don't know how you did it again. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but he did that, right? Why? Did I make that presentation an hour before the presentation? No. I started that presentation an hour after we got off the phone, and it was going to be due the following week. Why? So I can start the commitment flow. I'm not just going to be passionate. Passion doesn't produce commitment. I'm going to commit to it just a little bit. I just got it started. Then I get greedy and I want to do more and more and more. By the time I get to your presentation, I've thought through all the holes, and I tell them, no, this is the price point. Here's why. Here's the scholarship. Here's what the community looks like. Here's where AI has to go into. Here's the MacGuffin, which we can talk about one time in the future. And this is how things are going to be working, right? That came from probably dozens of different iterations of changes because I committed early and I started soon. I was efficient and effective.
I love that.
So, but I did it. I started when it was important, but not yet urgent.
And you made it important, right? Well, I guess it was a...
Well, you guys made it important. You said I was the only one who could come up with it. So then, we gave it, and our partner Vishen loved it too.
You made it not urgent, is what I should say. You didn't wait until the last moment. You started it immediately, because of course.
I think your dad would have every right to fire me if I did that, because it would not have been as good, and we would not have had the launch, that we had, and what at the time of this recording that we're about to have.
Mm-hmm. So you created the FIT networking formula, which stands for follow, invite, and tell. You follow someone until they've noticed you, you invite them to an interview, and then you tell everybody you know about the interview so that they can't back out. Mm-hmm. Who are some of the people that you've been able to connect with and been able to interview as a result of following this formula?
Every single person that you can go to Marketing Online and see who's given me testimonials, from Jack Canfield to Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI, to the late Larry King, to Harvey McKay, best-selling author, to Marianne Williamson, who ran for president, to 2 U.S. presidents, to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, a bunch of people. Now, I'll tell you where it came from. When social networking and social media started to become more prevalent, I'm going to say 2009, 2008, 2009. Facebook was just getting old enough, and we were early adopters. Yeah. So FIT stands for follow, invite, and tell, right?
Yes.
The FIT formula. So I'm in Malaysia, and I'm delivering how to get more exposure and visibility and marketing reach through my presence and through my brand. And the people who were in the audience, and they were from all over Asia. They came from India, they came from Japan and Thailand and all the different Asian countries, right? They came from, and China, Hong Kong. And they said, but you're Alex. And I'm not famous, right? You're Alex Mandossian, of course you can do it. I said, no, I just used a very simple formula. And that was the moment that the FIT formula was born, because I didn't realize what I had done. Right. So at that event, I said, I haven't thought it through, but it was urgent and important. Tomorrow, I will teach it to you. So I was panicked. I didn't sleep all night, and I came up with the FIT formula. What do I do that makes me successful? And so the first thing I do is I follow people, not passionately, with commitment. So I post comments. So my face shows up. It's doing all the work for me. I don't have to physically be in the same geographic territory.
Remind them that you exist, right?
Not only that, but I'm saying intelligent stuff, hopefully, right? So I follow them, and without following them, right, they're not going to notice me. Once they notice me, they go, hey, thanks for the comment. Okay, once I get that feedback, then I invite them for an interview just like this. Yep. Hey, would you be open, or would you favor a 20-minute interview with me on this topic? Like, you already know I'm committed to you. Oh, yeah. You already know what I've said. It may have been 3 months that this has been happening, right? But that one interview can get me a lot more exposure. So I invite them. If they say yes, then I tell the world, because if they don't show up, and I always do it live, because if I don't do it live, they may not show up, and that's happened to me before. So I follow. That could take up to 90 days, sometimes more. I invite them as soon as they say, hey, thank you for an interview. And then finally, I tell the world that, hey, such and such is going to be interviewed by me at this time. And it puts a lot of pressure on them to show up. And that's how I built my business.
I feel like the last part is a very important part in that formula, the telling other people so that they feel pressured to show up, but also, I wouldn't say forced, but they feel encouraged to show up by a crowd, right?
No, they feel pressured. Not just encouraged, because they don't want to be a no-show in front of them. Now, when I didn't tell, I just told them when to show up. A lot of them say, hey, sorry, I have to cancel.
No, there's no accountability.
Okay? No, there's no fear of embarrassment. Okay? Yeah, they renegotiated, but they renegotiated, I think, too soon to the time that we were going to have. But they can't do that if they know a few hundred people or a few thousand are going to be watching. And many of the people, their own people. See, the reason I could get more people listening or watching is I'm utilizing their name, right? And they don't know me, but they know that person, and I'm a good interviewer, and as a result, I get more notoriety by passing the rapport baton, over to me. So that's how I built it, and I taught many people how to do that. They're not willing to do the follow part. Like they quit after a week. Well, that means they're not committed.
There you go. You gotta commit.
They're passionate, but they're not committed.
Can you explain the concept of ethical influence and how it differs from more traditional marketing approaches?
Gladly. Ethical influence is the opposite of unethical influence. Unethical influence, also known as possibly manipulation, is when I'm attempting to influence someone, but it's not for their greater good, and I'm hiding something from them. Ethical influence, according to my definition, Robert Cialdini talks about it a lot in his books and in his papers, but ethical influence to me is transparently doing my best to influence them. I'm telling them that I'm attempting to influence them. If it seems like I'm trying to influence you, you will not be disappointed. I am attempting to influence you. I'm going to do everything in my power to motivate, influence, and persuade you to say, yes, here's why. That's ethical influence to me. It's transparent.
Gotcha. So state the facts, tell the truth, influence people.
If I could give you a 3-word marketing plan, which is the greatest of all, it's this: tell the truth.
It's surprising to me that isn't just rule of thumb, right?
I tell the truth not because it's the right thing to do. I tell people this in my audiences. I tell the truth not because my mom said it was the right thing to do, Carol Mandossian, who still doesn't know what I do. She thinks I steal money or something. I tell the truth because I make more money telling the truth. Nothing is as persuasive as the truth. So I do it for selfish reasons. And so that's why you can count on it. It's a win for me, I tell them, to tell the truth. What's your problem of not telling the truth? You're really missing out on a lot more profit.
Your mentor, Roy H. Williams, also known as the Wizard of Ads, wrote something along the lines of, relevance is the match, credibility is the gunpowder. Relevance plus credibility equals boom. Can you talk about the relationship between those two things?
Well, I believe in a third part, and Roy is my marketing mentor. He's been since 2002, and he runs Wizard Academy in Austin, Texas, and credibility and relevancy. So relevant, if something isn't relevant, Google wouldn't be what Google is, right? So relevance means it has meaning for this specific person. Credibility is you have meaning to this specific person.
Yes.
So relevance is why this, okay? And credibility is why me. Now I added a third, which is relevancy, why this, credibility, why me, and urgency, why now. So if not this, then what? If not me, then who? If not now, then when? So I just added the, R plus C multiplied by U. Most people fall apart with urgency. They don't know how to create urgency. So if something needs to get done, if someone's dying of cancer and you have the elixir to fix it and it's going to cost 10 grand, you're going to buy it immediately, right? But if someone says, if you ever get cancer, then this elixir will solve the problem, chances are you won't get that 10K, right? Because I don't have cancer yet. I can always get it later on. So how do you ethically create urgency? Well, here's one way. We have 350 seats. The reason 350 is our number is because the fire marshal tells us we can't have one more person in the room with all the audiovisual people and all the teams and everyone else, right? So the event is on this date. We have 350 seats. This email is going out to 4,500 people. Now, we're expecting about 1/3 of the people opening that email and 2/3 not opening it. Well, if you opened it, congratulations, you're one of the 1/3. That means you're one of about 1,100 people who open this. We only have 19 seats left. Here are the people who are going. Will you make it there? First come, first serve. It's up to you. The standby list starts at 3:51. Will you be on it? That's urgency. That's ethical. And all that's true, and I'm in the middle of a campaign just like that.
Oh, wow.
So I just wrote that.
I like that. So it's not necessarily exclusivity, but we're running out. We're running out of
You're telling
X.
the truth.
Yeah.
You could also say there's 350 seats. This is going out to 1,100 people who are going to open this, and you're one of them. If 1/3 say yes, we may be out. So you don't have to say there's 19 seats left. That just happens to be the truth. But it's how you position it ethically, and the truth always, they say the truth sets you free. The truth makes you rich.
So you talked a little bit about positioning there. What's the importance of just positioning yourself, your service, or your product when it comes to the career category in general?
As far as career goes, the way I position myself is, rather than hiring a chief marketing officer for $300,000 a year and finding out after 6 months I'm not a right fit, or you're not a right fit for me, why not hire me for 3 months? Let's see if we can double your profits, not revenue, but profits during that time, and it'll cost you 1/10 that. My positioning is, I can get the job done that other people can do, but it's going to take me 3 months instead of 3 years.
Well, I mean, that's pretty fantastic, isn't it? You just get the same thing done, but faster.
It's $30,000. I may not get the same thing done. I mean, the CMO is going to get a lot more done because he's there for a while, or she. But sometimes they just need a spark. Many times they don't even have to hire a CMO. They just need a marketing director, which is 1/3 the cost, right? Instead of $300K, they could get in for $85 or $100K. I end up hiring that person, and then I either do a revenue share or I go in for another 3 months for $30K. My fees haven't changed in 10 years, and I'm starting to think I should change them, but I live a very comfortable life, and I just know how to sell that, and people say yes. So there's a standby list, because there's only so many people I can say yes to.
One of my favorite quotes by you is
Your dad hired me.
Yeah, very true, very true. One of my favorite quotes by you is, "You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate," which
I
is
got
why.
that from another mentor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite quotes by him
Yeah.
is, "Negotiation is the most important thing in life. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate."
100%.
Right?
I would have negotiated coming out of the womb if I could. I think not enough people negotiate. I used to teach a class on negotiation, and it was part of a 5-day event, and it was on day 4, and we used to take people out on teams at lunch to negotiate anything they could. Lunch, retail stores, whatever. Now, if I sent them out one by one and told them to come back with a story, no one would come back with a story because they were too afraid to negotiate because they're lone wolves. But when I send them out in packs of 4 and 5, they'd all do it.
Pack hunters.
The power of the wolf is in the pack, and the power of the pack is in the wolf. So I would send them out, and I would tell them the story about the wolf and the pack and all that kind of stuff. And I'd say, okay, let me hear you howl on the way out. And they'd go, "Ow!" And then they come in, and they bought all this crap, for like 30 cents on the dollar. They'd negotiate cars, all kinds of stuff. I told them, you have to buy it, though. Don't torture these poor salespeople, right? And then they'd come back, and they'd howl coming in. They'd tell stories because they were in a pack. So yes, you get what you negotiate, but people don't have the courage many times to negotiate on their own as a lone wolf. But when they're in the pack, their courage increases wondrously.
What do you think are some of the other fears around, maybe not necessarily negotiation, but not being able to market your skill or your product effectively? Not being able to market yourself effectively. Some people are scared because, I don't know.
I think some people are wired for rejection. I am, just like anyone else, and they don't want to be feeling rejected.
Right.
Biggest mistake, if you were to ask me the question, what's the biggest mistake people make with marketing? Every business is a marketer. Every marketer. Are you married?
Yes.
You're a marketer. Okay? Your parents were marketers, and they gave birth to you. Okay? you're a marketer, you got this interview, right? You're a marketer when you decided to write down all these notes and, come prepared. And you're very prepared. Some of the stuff I haven't heard in a long time,
Thank you.
you found them out somewhere, right? So I think everyone's a marketer. I think the challenge is they make the mistake thinking it's all about the product and the service when it's not. It's all about the customer. If they know their customer, if they know their fears, if they know their aspirations, if they know their affiliations, where they're affiliated, if they know what affinity they may have with certain likes and dislikes, right? If they just focus on the customer, the product will sell itself.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're not convincing the product to sell someone, you're convincing the person to be convinced about the product or the service. So the biggest challenge with marketing is they don't focus on the market, they focus on the product instead.
You've referred many, many people to Lifebook, right? And sometimes Lifebook is hard to explain to people. How would you explain it to your friends?
Lifebook is the dash between your birth date and your death in however many words it takes to fill those 12 categories. So Lifebook will change over time, so it is a living, breathing document. Lifebook will tap you into a community of other people who want the self-awareness to care about improving their life. And Lifebook knows and presupposes that if it ain't written, it doesn't exist.
So I've heard you say this quote more than a few times, and it's Latin, I believe. Cogito ergo sum, which translates to, I think, therefore I am.
Yes.
What kind of significance does this quote hold to you?
Well, ironically, that Latin term, I think, therefore I am, was first spoken by a mathematician and the father of Western philosophy. His name is Monsieur René Descartes. He was a Frenchman. And all it means is if I'm able to think, then I must exist. And think was his verb. See, I believe people in life, whether you have a life book or not, they live one of three ways. You hear about pronouns these days. Well, I think people live either as adjectives. They're constantly people-pleasing and describing things but never getting to the point. They can live their lives as nouns. It's boring. Person, places, or things, like watching paint dry. Or they can live their lives as verbs.
Doing.
And move people, right? So I think is his verb, right? If Steve Jobs were alive, I think his verb would be I innovate, therefore I am. My verb is I engage, therefore I am. It's a keynote speech I give. It's available at discoveryourverb.com, and there's no opt-in, and I'm not going to be stalking anyone digitally on it, but they can learn more about that. But more important than cogito ergo sum is carpe diem, which is seize the day.
Right.
And everyone knows carpe diem. Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams, that movie, people have seen it. That made that kind of famous, but it's been Latin for many, many years. I wear an indigo bracelet, and it says carpe vitae, and carpe vitae is Latin for seize your life. Now you have maybe 30 to 35,000 days in your life. Seizing every one of those is hard. But if you have one life, and let's say you don't believe in reincarnation, then it's your dash. And to make your dash count, carpe vitae, seize your life. The life book will allow you to do that one category at a time.
All right, Alex Mandossian, thank you so much for your time, man.
You're welcome.
My goodness.